Hey everybody, welcome back to Horror Trans. I am Stephanie Bree. I talk about all things horror. I am a transgender woman, and today I'm talking about horror icons, zombies. There won't be any reviews this week. I'm taking the rest of December off to catch up watching some movies, so I'll get back to reviewing movies in January, so please bear with me. In the meantime, go back and check out the reviews you may have missed. Zombies. So zombies come in a variety of flavors. You have two, well, so you have two categories of zombies. You have voodoo zombies, and then you have all other zombies. Um, so under voodoo zombies, basically, a zombie is a corpse that is reanimated through a voodoo ritual, and this would be the basis of the early Hollywood horror movie Zombie. Voodoo zombies have more or less not just taken a back seat, but been swept under the rug in greater Hollywood and indie films. Uh, Zombies today are more mimicking George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead ghouls, as they were called in that movie. These are undead creatures, corpses that are reanimated either through science or maybe mysticism or sometimes no explanation at all. There's a subset of these types of zombies that are not reanimated corpses, but we see these in movies like 28 Days Later and a handful of others, where it's not really a corpse being reanimated. It's more like a virus that makes the human primal so that they attack other humans and eat their flesh for whatever reason. But by and large, the zombie movie, for the most part, is a post-apocalyptic survival horror. Again, there are some exceptions, but we'll talk about some of those as we come across them. The most popular zombie franchises, there are three that I want to talk about that are ultra popular, that transcend horror and have entered the popular lexicon. The first is the aforementioned George A. Romero's Living Dead franchise. This would be Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Night of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Survival of the Dead, etc. There's a whole bunch of them. These are more or less political commentaries on the state of humanity at the time they were made. Using the zombie apocalypse as an allegory for whatever is ailing humanity at that time, be it capitalism, or the war on terror, or fear of the unknown, or whatever. In the case of Night of the Living Dead, it would have been the civil rights movement and the anxieties social anxieties that was causing. To the privileged white people, it did look like it was the end of the world because, oh no, the blacks were getting rights. What are we ever going to do? Well, 40 years later, put Donald Trump in the White House and set us back a half century, but that's another topic for another day. The second, I would say, ultra popular zombie franchise is Return of the Living Dead. Now, this one, I wouldn't go so far as to say is as important as the Land of the Dead or the Living Dead franchise per se, but it's important at least to horror, and it is also referenced a lot. This one introduced talking zombies who eat brains, which has become a trope. Maybe not the talking zombies, but the eating brains. A lot of people know zombies eat brains. That comes from Return of the Living Dead. And then the third one is obviously The Walking Dead and its infinite fucking spin-offs. I'm convinced that The Walking Dead is never gonna die. So, in and then you also have Resident Evil, which is um, based on a video game. So that's more sci-fi than zombie, but it's sci-fi zombies, I guess. But anyways, you have typically what you have is an unknown plague that scientists and newscasters can't quite put a pin on, that is bringing the dead back to life, and they're eating people. And so you have, usually at the start of the movie, the collapse of society. And then the middle part of the movie, you have the survivors taking a stand somewhere, trying to, maintain a semblance of a normal life. And then towards the end of the movie, all hell breaks loose, and you get down to just survival mode. It's just eat or be eaten. This is the formula for a zombie movie. If they were going to make a Scream of the zombie franchise, this is the formula they would be talking about. I don't know if Shaun of the Dead counts as the Scream of the zombie franchise. Excuse me, zombie genre, not franchise. But I digress. Now, in most zombie apocalypse movies and things, whatever, the zombie apocalypse, the origin of it, in most of them, is unknown. It's usually assumed to be some force, either like a virus or a force of nature or possibly an alien invasion or supernatural, but it's unknown. It's left to the imagination. Also, in according to the formula, in most zombie media, the zombies spread whatever it is, the zombie virus or whatever it is, by biting or scratching or wounding others. Basically, it's like an infection. It's treated like an infection, even if it isn't technically an infection. And in most zombie media, the only way to kill a zombie is to sever its head. Either shoot it in the head, cause irreparable brain damage, hit it with a hammer or something, or chop the head off. Which chopping the head off doesn't always work. We've seen that in The Walking Dead. The heads keep chomping. And in the case of Zombie Jason, shooting him in the head doesn't do a goddamn thing. So, that's a topic for another day. But then you have the zombies like Resident Evil, where the cause of the zombie outbreak is known. This is also the case in The Crazies and 28 Days, 28 Weeks Later, and The Walking Dead, it's ambiguous, but it's kind of known. But it's kind of known. It's especially known in Resident Evil and 28 Days Later. In this case, it is a virus. In Resident Evil, it's the T virus, which was created by a pharmaceutical company under a military contract in the hopes of weaponizing human corpses as military soldiers. And it backfires. And in the case of 28 Days, 28 Weeks Later, it's a rage virus that just turns humans into primal monsters. I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen The Crazies in a very long time, so my memories of it are quite fuzzy, so I can't comment on the specifics of what it is in The Crazies. But my vague recollection is it's not typical zombies. It's more like 28 Days Later zombies. So I will have to go back and revisit The Crazies at some point in time so I can make a accurate assessment of it. In The Walking Dead, you have an added layer of the zombie threat. They don't have to bite you. You could go your whole life never even seeing a zombie. But as soon as you die, you come back as a walker, as they call it in the franchise. A zombie is essentially what it is. So that's unique. Zombies are in my opinion, one of the scarier movie monsters because they're us. They're our friends, our families, our loved ones, the people we trust. They're doctors and cops and nurses and the people that we turn to protect us and keep society functioning, and they have become the monsters that have torn the fabric of society apart. Which is why the word zombie apocalypse is often used to describe these movies or stories, because there are also TV shows and video games. Now, depending on the zombie lore, the believability of the spread of the zombie infection, we'll call it, is called into question. If you're talking Romero zombies, realistically, we are never going to get to apocalypse level with Romero zombies, because if it starts out with just one or two people and they have to bite somebody, the chances of them biting one or two other people are slim enough. The chances of them biting enough people to get it to the levels we see in those movies are next to impossible. You're not just going to stand there and put your arm up and let somebody bite you. You're not going to do that. I'm not going to fucking do that. And I didn't have to see a zombie movie to know not to let the crazy person bite my arm. So, the Romero zombie spread of the infection is not believable if it has a singular point of origin. Now, if it's like The Walking Dead, where it's worldwide and it's inevitable, that's a different story. But since it's not explained in the Romero zombie universe, we can safely assume, based on the level of spread, that there might be some catalyst assisting the spread of the virus or the infection or whatever it is. Because they don't really give an explanation, an origin of the infection, whatever the infection is. They do treat it like an infection, though. If you get bit or scratched, you become one. So it is a type of infection. We just don't know if it's a supernatural infection or a viral type infection or what. They don't give us that information in the Romero zombie universe. And in the Walking Dead universe, it isn't being bitten or scratched that turns you into a zombie. It's dying that turns you into a zombie. But sustaining wounds from a zombie attack is going to kill you. So getting attacked by zombies is likely to turn you into one. If they don't eat you anyways, eat you alive. And in all cases, regardless of the origin of the zombie infection, in all zombie apocalypse movies, TV shows, etc., the zombies are driven to eat flesh for whatever reason, even in 28 Days Later. They're just driven to eat flesh. Now, I call this into question because this is predicated on the assumption that when we're absolutely starving to death, our first instinct is to eat each other. And this is not the case. When you're starving to death, your first instinct is to roast the cat. If you have nothing else. If you have no access to food, you eat the cat or the dog. Once you run out of animals to eat, you look for plants. So the driven by hunger to eat flesh trope doesn't really make sense. It doesn't hold the mustard. Because even if you're an undead zombie and you have no cerebral cortex and you have no higher functioning whatever, you have no sense of self or identity or anything, you get hungry and you're driven by hunger, primal hunger, that's the cause, that's the driving force. You're not going to turn to your sister and say, you know what, yum, 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 let's eat. You're going to eat the cat first. We do not see, as far as I've noticed, in any zombie movie where they eat the animals. Now, they did kill the horse in The Walking Dead, but this was the only instance I can think of where in any zombie apocalypse media, they killed the animals. Now, to be fair, a lot of zombie apocalypse media is devoid of animals. We don't really see dogs and cats running around in the human encampments where they're trying to survive. We don't see pigs and chickens and ducks and cows. So it is conceivable that the zombies did eat the animals first, and when there were no more animals left, ate each other. That is a conceit I'll make. However, since that's not depicted, I'm going to call that into question. I'm not going to stamp it with bullshit, but I'm going to call it into question. Because, when I'm hungry, I don't look at my arm and think lunch. Well, to be fair, I'd have to be pretty fucking hungry before I eat the goddamn cat. So, yeah. I don't buy the driven by the primal nature of let's eat, so let's eat each other. I'm not sold on that. I think that's just a trope to make the zombies scarier. So, as far as I'm concerned, none of the zombie media I have seen has ever given a plausible, believable, realistic, fair, science-balanced explanation for why they fucking eat each other. Because, we wouldn't do that in a zombie apocalypse. Before you bring up the Donner Party, that was an extreme case where there were no fucking animals to eat. There were no fucking plants to eat. They got desperate. They ate each other. Yes, got desperate. You see where I'm going with this? The zombie apocalypse, they're not desperate. There's an overabundance of other sources of food they just ignore. And I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. I'm sorry. You can take your slick salesman, silver tongue, and get the fuck out of my door. I ain't buying it. Now, personally, I'm iffy on the zombie apocalypse medium. While I have consumed a excessive amount of zombie movies and TV shows, including The Walking Dead and the Resident Evil movies, etc., I haven't seen enough of them that make me say, oh yeah, I'm a fan of the zombie apocalypse trope. I've seen enough of them to say, yeah, they're gory fucking movies and I want to see the gore, sure. But I can get gore elsewhere, The Hellraiser movies are fucking gory. The Saw movies are fucking gory, So, it's not just about the gore for me. I need something more than that. And I think what draws a lot of people to the zombie apocalypse story is the breakdown of society. It's the survival instinct. The question, what would I do in that scenario? We try to imagine, well, what would I do? Would I hunker down? Would I let them eat me? Would I, just shoot every bullet I have possession of until I run out of bullets? What the fuck would I do in that scenario? And I think it's this what if that drives interest in the zombie apocalypse story. Because people are like, well, what would the end of the world look like? And the zombie apocalypse is a relatively safe way to experience that end of the world survivalist scenario without actually, living through the end of the world. Depending on where you are right now, it could look like the end of the world, but I'm not going to get into the details. Because that's always been the case since the beginning of time. But like it or not, believe it or not, accept it or not, humans are a force of nature, and by and large, we are not a good force of nature. We are, destructive. So it makes sense that once the societal glue breaks down that holds us together and makes us civilized is gone, we would turn into monsters. This isn't just in the zombie apocalypse. This has been depicted in any apocalypse scenario movie or, time of desperation. Humans are monsters. At the end of the day, we're carnivores. And our instinct is to eat other living things at all costs. So to that end, yeah, I do buy a zombie apocalypse. Because humans are monsters. And the zombie apocalypse just brings it to the forefront. Makes it unambiguous. If you want proof that humans are monsters, let's look at the millions of fucking soulless, gutless pieces of shit that voted for Donald Trump. That's all the proof you need that humans are monsters.